invite our speakers and panelists up. You, wherever you want to sit. It's just we probably have more people on the stage than any session at the forum, so we just have to. We're doing a stage test right now, and hopefully it's good for 8 people. If we go down, it'll make for a good TikTok video or something like that. But first thing I want to do is I want to let, besides the 4 speakers, we also have 3 panelists, and I guess Alan, we'll call you a speaker instead of a panelist right now. But first thing I'll do is Elena Sales. Please introduce yourself and talk about how Intel was instrumental in certainly helping TED with some of the AI as a service.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to explain. I don't know that folks know. Intel has an industry sales team. I cover manufacturing, have peers that cover retail, healthcare, education, and energy. And so we work together with partners like TED. In obviously enabling him with some Intel ingredients, working with our end customers, many of which that we are actually working with day in and day out. But now we're going deeper into our relationship to work on the OT side of the business. And so I have been hearing in every panel discussion the echo about it taking a village, and we've got ecosystem partners, but we do find that we help our end customers actually fill those gaps to accomplish digital transformation.
Great. Next, I wanted to introduce Jason Anderson from Stratus and talk about your role in helping SDI.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jason. I lead strategy and product management for Stratus. As Mike pointed out, Stratus builds mission-critical compute platforms. They run for very long periods of time and, depending on your needs, varying degrees of performance. And we helped, our business model is to really help partners like SDI all the time. They're a textbook case of how we do business. We embed our compute technology into a solution, and then it basically makes the entire solution more resilient, better operations, and more serviceable, so you can run it for a long haul.
Okay, great. And Paul Adams from GE Digital to talk about some of your role with the Nissan project.
Sure, so Paul Adams, I'm a customer engagement director with GE Digital. Nissan's a 30-plus year customer with us. When I started as a software engineer, I was working closely with Nissan on the projects that they have going on now. And now as an engagement director, we're meeting regularly with Nissan, Phil and his team, doing governance, introducing them to new products that could help them in their journey. Like he said, the North American plants are utilizing a lot of the Simplicity technology, but we've got a lot of NPI, new product development that we're doing that we're introducing to Phil as we do with other customers. But Nissan's had a big voice in our roadmap over the years, right, as we do with a lot of our customers, is, hey, how do we listen there and what they're doing and how do we align to that?
Okay, great. If anybody in the audience has any questions, certainly raise your hand, and one of my colleagues, I'm sure, will come out around with a mic. But I'd say to get things kicked off, some questions, Phil, for Nissan is, how aggressive are you moving to the cloud?
From an OT standpoint, I guess, we'll look at the cloud, but again, it's really waived on what's the latency, what's the mission criticalness of it, and what's the security piece. Is got to be, those 3 things have to be comfortable. We're comfortable, we'll go to the cloud. Certainly we are doing some in manufacturing or OT, but again, I think there's still a lot of room to move that direction.
Okay. And I'll ask the other speakers as far as your own progress in moving to the cloud. So say, Mike, as far as are you going
So we end up with a slightly different customer basis, and majority of them actually prefer to be completely off the grid. They're going to say, this is capital equipment, we're going to put it into a dedicated area, and we're not giving it internet access. And unless they have a very good reason, it typically stays like that. Now recently, with pushing more and more for data analytics coming out of it, they're starting to approach it with the idea of, okay, we're going to open up one hole. We're going to let one single pipe come out, and we're going to try to put everything into that, and then we're going to see how much mileage that gives us, and do we use that to justify doing more.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ted, with some of your projects.
Yeah, thank you very much. The cloud is obviously a tremendous asset. As Phil said, there's a latency issue. It depends on where the cloud is and how far away it is and how big the pipes are between where I am and the cloud. So love the cloud. I like it more if you drop it into my factory. That way I don't have latency issues and I have less security issues, and I know that's coming. So yeah, cloud is great. Love cloud. I love virtualization. I like hypervisors. I'm a geek. Because the data is then free to move around anywhere you want.
Mm-hmm. And certainly, Alan, I'm sure you're using Azure with your projects, right?
Absolutely. No, we're Amazon, again, the site-wide service, I think, was a wake-up call when they went to something that actually understood OT data instead of us having to stitch all that data back together again and make it look like what it looked like originally. And Azure has those same capabilities coming here fairly quickly.
Okay. Anything, just seeing if there's any audience questions right now. If not, I remember, Mike, you had talked about, certainly, what have you seen as far as the adoption of robots? You had talked about that. Can you talk about some of those rates?
Oh, sure. So what's interesting is watching different robots come into the warehouse and in some cases, them complementing each other. We've seen robotic ASRS solutions come in and now being paired with AGVs. So, for example, our AGV robotic solution, you can come into a warehouse that's a grass field and you simply put in racking and then you simply keep adding robots to it to actually pick up and move those racking around. So if you need more storage, you don't necessarily have to scale your technical infrastructure, you simply scale the number of shelves you buy. But then as throughput begins to push and decide, all right, we actually do need to get more out of this, so our rate's going up, you can now begin to buy more robots. Whereas like historically what you've seen is like such and such as a service that scales cleaner now, we're now actually seeing robotics in the logistics industry kind of follow that exact same trend.
Okay, great. And we have an audience question?
Yes. Hi, my name is Jason Benito from Magna, and I have a question for Phil. You spoke a lot about your MES and OT integration. Can you comment a little bit about your IT-OT integration during that journey too?
So you mean like from an organization standpoint, where 18 months ago or so, we took the OT team, and it's part of Nissan Digital now, or IT, I think is what your question is. So yeah, some of the synergies, really what we look at is one is that we know that it's a different service SLA to manufacturing than it is maybe to supply chain or even marketing and sales. So what we did was whatever best practices, so things that we've done, if we talk about cybersecurity. So the corporate piece is we've got Carbon Black, we've got Tenable.io. We pushed that out to all the manufacturing end devices, so now we took advantage of information security at the broader corporate level to be monitoring those devices to help offset some of that, maybe that we weren't doing so well on the manufacturing side would be one example. But certain processes that work are much more nimble in manufacturing than maybe the broader IT side, we've kept the same. So again, we're being ultra flexible, we're being careful, we understand it's a different customer, but certainly taking advantage of the synergies when we see them. So another one, one other thing, is really on from what we've seen is the IT, so my boss, the CIO of North America, or I'm sorry, the Americas, there's a lot more, again, he has access to the chairman, so wherever the OT side before used to report up to an engineering team, right? So engineering has a much bigger focus than maybe IT on the plant floor. So again, this gives them a lot bigger view. We got a lot more access to, I'll say, money than what we had before.
Okay. Probably as a follow-up for that, and I'll probably ask the speakers to kind of define, where your project's up in particular as far as where you are on the IT-OT convergence journey. And then I'd like to ask the panelists as far as where they see all their customers as far as if they had to sum up how they're progressing in their IT-OT convergence journey. So I'll start with Alan, and then we'll work our way down.
Well, specifically on this project with most of the small to medium, there was no IT. And it was OT convergence. I would say in a broader sense, in the space that CirrusLink works with inductive automation and companies like that, we are seeing a lot better cooperation. I think the more, I guess me from a selfish standpoint, it's interesting. MQTT was invented for OT, it was adopted by IT, and now we're getting it back into OT again. And it's interesting now to have conversations where IT understand PubSub, and they're starting to understand how all these can go together, and we're actually getting a lot more convergence that way.
Okay. And Paul, I'd say from your GE Digital customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen a lot of transition in the past 5 years. I think we're seeing a lot more cooperation in the manufacturers we serve, whether it's on the discrete side or on the process side. You know, there was a lot of contention before, but, you know, Phil kind of summed it up his way. There's more cooperation. They're looking together, hey, how do we work these things together and do better to do a rollout? So I'm definitely seeing an improvement there in that relationship, customers we work with.
Okay, Jason?
So we're a technology company, and we make computers basically. So we made a big decision about 10 years ago to begin to focus on OT and kind of get to market through them. And in a lot of cases, we were adopted almost as a rogue effort by OT, right? Kind of as a way to kind of subvert the IT standards boards. And that has changed radically. I'd say it went from us being brought in rogue to this situation, which I would say we're kind of at the waning stages of, which was OT advocated for us and they had leadership in it, and IT just basically said, do you meet these standards? Okay, checkbox, you can go. And now it's more of a collaboration where, in fact, a couple of our customers who are here today are now IT customers, or they're in these blended teams like Nissan's referring to. So it's been this kind of interesting journey for us to watch it progress. And, you know, we're really happy to see it because we think it really lends itself well to what we provide. So we're really excited to see it go down that way.
And Elena?
So I work with a range of customers, and depending on who we were talking about, their digital transformation either's just begun or maybe they've identified 2 of 100 use cases they want to solve for. So it's been very interesting in understanding who their preferred vendors are, and if they actually have those capabilities, or if Intel works with them to enable the solution just right for that customer.
Okay, Mike?
So with our customers, they end up varying so wildly. I share a lot of similarities there. What we're seeing, at least from my perspective on it, is a changing dynamic where security is playing more and more of a role, and IT is effectively being forced to kind of step up and handle that. Whereas historically you would have security and networking and IT as like different departments, they're now slowly blending as one. Kind of gets back to the do more with less. And then as a side effect of that, with IT having to pick up more of those responsibilities, there's a backfill, there's a void there. And what we're seeing is OT actually fill that void, whereas historically your OT and your floor IT tech guys, one, their skill set's having to radically improve because the stuff they're working with is advancing so far. And even down to some, historically what we've seen for like maintenance staff that even turns wrenches on conveyors, they're now coming in to have to understand basic electronics and programming because you don't have gravity roller anymore. You have MDR. Your rollers are motors. It's got photo eyes and cards all built into integrated circuits. You now need to be able to troubleshoot that. And what's coming with that is a better understanding and knowledge to actually support the IT infrastructure. So now we have our OT, and even like we've got customers where their maintenance and their IT and OT are really all the same thing. The next tier up is really what they're starting to just call security. It's their network, their old IT, and their network security profiles.
Okay, and Ted?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's from 0 to 100. You got everything. I'll never forget, I was in Benton Harbor, Michigan at Whirlpool. We first connected their appliances to the internet, and I'm sitting at a table, and on one side of the table, there's a guy standing on a chair from OT yelling at the guy who's standing on a chair at the other side of the table who's from IT. And I'm sitting in between and going, this is not going to work. And we solved that problem. And a lot of the ways we solve that problem is report them to the same person. And you put them in the same P&L, and then suddenly everybody becomes friends because they have to. That's what I've seen the most successful companies do. Intel did that about, in the mid-90s, because they were forced to. But I think that's a reasonably good practice. We're all doing similar things. We're all engineers or IT. The OT folks are doing IT. They are doing IT work. I mean, and as you said, security, the IT folks know security a lot better than the OT folks, because OT folks, their security was, I unplugged it, you know? And so, yeah, there's skill sets on both that everybody needs. And if you're standing on a chair yelling at your colleague, you're probably not in the right place.
Yeah, that's for sure. We have an audience question.
How's it going? I'm Luke Broldy from Cisco Systems. And I'd be curious to get your take on, as you're seeing more connected devices, more autonomous machinery, and this data proliferation driving decisions in the business, how you're handling security and how far down into like the Purdue model you're getting. Are we getting to the machine layer, or how deep do you see that as being tangible or attainable?
That sounds like a good question, probably for the full panel, and we can probably, I'll start with Alan.
I would say it goes all the way down to the edge. Again, to some extent, if you look at publish and subscribe, it kind of bypasses the Purdue model because you don't have any ports open at the edge. You can go straight up. But even with the Purdue model, let's say they have a pipeline company and they've got, I've got a private VSAT network, no problem. Well, yes, it is a problem because if somebody does get into that, now everything is open under the false pretense that, we don't have to protect our other devices. So I would say at most of the projects that we're doing across oil and gas, water, wastewater, utilities, electrical, we're going all the way to the very edge for cybersecurity.
Okay. And Paul, from your perspective from GE Digital.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I mean, and a lot of the customers we work with, CPG, food and beverage, I mean, that, a lot of regulations there. So the security is really paramount to what they're doing. I'm sure Phil can talk about it from the discrete automotive perspective, but just from the customers I deal with, yeah, CPG, food and beverage, the security is pretty locked down to that edge area.
And Phil?
So while they were talking, I was struggling to get my thoughts because it's such a complicated topic. And I don't know what the right answer is. Obviously, I think from the OT side, I mean, I'd say most of us are trying to catch up where we need to be. And so that goes down maybe to the first question, Craig, that you asked about, the cloud, right? So for reasons why we might not be moving faster there, it's because of the security concerns we have on the plant floor. So it's really, again, we've got the unplug mentality, right? So for years and years and years, it's wall it off. We'll protect it with the firewalls. If something ever happens on the IT side, because nothing's ever going to happen on the OT side, we'll unplug and we can run, right? But now, again, you start thinking about the threat actors are getting much more sophisticated. They're coming after manufacturing and OT because they see it as an easy thing to get. So, and again, we got to worry about what's coming from IT over, but you also got to worry about what's walking in your door with 100 suppliers coming in with jump drives and their PCs and laptops to go do their stuff. So again, I think we're attacking it at all angles. It's just, I would just say we're in catch-up mode.
Okay, Jason?
Sure. So it is complicated. I guess what I would say, to your point specifically, you mentioned the Purdue model. And when you think about security, there's the scope of what's protected and then how you protect it. Those are kind of two separate thoughts. We have seen a big uptick in discussion and activity about the scope, meaning, how do we provide some sort of shielding and kind of reduce the threat canvas at the, let's say, layers 2 and 1 level of the Purdue model, right at the bottom. Some of that equipment is really old. Some of it, is basically connected to the network in funky ways. So really, really hard to do besides maybe putting some intermediary type of software in to basically provide some sort of shielding for it versus actually deploying it. So it's part of the scope, but it's not necessarily part of the solution. You start to see it really show up, especially with cybersecurity, in layer 3. So we do a lot of layer 3 stuff at Stratus. That's where a lot of our stuff's deployed. And we're definitely starting to see, especially as virtualization and containerization come on board, you're definitely starting to see cybersecurity controls and systems and solutions being deployed right alongside those layer 3 pieces of software into a thing. And as you get further down the road away from the Purdue model to an IoT 4 model, that's when you start to really see it all kind of blend together, much in the way of a cloud, and then that changes the framework and the scoping of the solution. So it's kind of weird. We're in this kind of funky intermediate phase where there's a lot of Band-Aids out there. we see a clear line of sight to the future that will remain complex but different. We also are beginning to build controls into our products themselves to assist with that. So that's something else we're doing. But it's complicated, but we are seeing some trends and practices beginning to emerge, which is very, very enlightening on the plant floor.
Okay, Eleanor?
So I'll confess I can't get that technical with regards to that, but I am experiencing with a couple of customers we're working with through our partners, security being an issue that they're trying, we'll say, batches of data and troubleshooting to feel more confident that there is no security risk in that.
So one of the many hats I wear actually is to answer that particular question to my boss and kind of set the precedences in the company. And we do a lot of our work, majority of our deliverables are PLCs. So we're sitting there, we are the edge. And assuming that we're on a secure VLAN, that's even if it's isolated, just isn't good enough today. And we're not guaranteed that's coming across the board. So we came to the table with, all right, let's assume nothing's safe. What's the best practice we can do without killing ourselves with configuration? So a couple years ago, we set forth a standard that says every single one of our PLCs that's delivered to site is going to have a hardware-based firewall in front of it. And that firewall is going to be restricted down to only the exact explicit ports it needs to function, and it will only receive data directly from the server it's pointed to. So it has one IP it accepts and only a handful of protocols. With that in mind, we've put that into practice and had a lot of success with it. And as I'm watching some of the other security presentations earlier where they mentioned, hey, we dropped this on your network, we scan it, we can identify our devices and help it. I'm like, that wouldn't work for my world. You wouldn't see any of them unless you're actually running the scanning protocol on that one server.
Okay, Ted?
Yeah, real quick, security is everything because without it, we have nothing. I'm a big fan of hardware and software security. If the thing's connected, you need to integrate both. So I don't think we are where we need to be. I'm scared. I know a lot of smart people are working on it. I'm happy about that. But my theory is if it's connected, it's got to be secured.
Okay. Do we have any other audience questions? If not, I have one that we'll start on this end now, Ted, because especially regarding AI. And, you know, we all know that AI is promising, but what do you think's holding back large-scale deployments? And then we'll work in this direction. So now you get to have more time to think this time.
Yeah, it's a great question. What I've seen out in the field, a lot of companies are very successful doing studies, doing small projects in the lab. But transferring it from a lab-type environment to the manufacturing environment has been incredibly difficult. When you're building, there are three things that have to happen before you implement an IoT solution in your factory. First, you have to have a set of processes so you don't screw it up and plug something in and have what happened to Peugeot. If you don't know what happened to Peugeot, Google it. They lost 2 auto factories. So you need a process. So you got to have that set up. And then you need to have the ability to take something and scale it in your factories that don't have the same resources that you have in your lab. Your lab has a data scientist, they have programmers, they have all these resources that the factory doesn't have. So you have to dumb down your product, kind of the Steve Jobs earlier this morning, make it simple so that the people in the factory can install it and get it up and running. Once we get to that point, then I think AI scales.
Okay. Good.
So in our industry, we end up doing it specifically because it's retail. Retail has a cyclical curve to it. We know we have a curve within a day, we have a curve within a week, we have a curve within a month, we have a curve within a year, and all of them affect each other. It's a compound sine wave. So one of the holy grails of the idea was, okay, can we learn that? Can we actually get enough information out of that and actually get the information from the best place possible, the actual machine, because it's reality, and then start to graph it and apply it. And then we're now taking that is actually happening, and it's pushing it slow, and we're actually tying it into marketing. So when marketing pushes a sale, when Dillard sells a brand of women's shoes, we know that these key DCs are the ones supplying it. We're getting to the point where we'll actually start front-loaded the processing because we know historically exactly what that load's going to look like that day. And AI's come back in and said, okay, this is what they pushed for the day. This is how long the sale ran. This is how much stuff we've sold. And we've got a pretty good idea. This is how hard you're going to be hit tomorrow. You need to start proactively getting your temp laborers guys coming in now.
So with regards to AI scaling, I mean, there's one thing that I can remember. I was at a site and we were putting together an algorithm. And we actually had to rely on a person that was twice retired. And so whether we like it or not, we're going to have to be in a place where we do scale, right? We're going to have to position ourselves to have folks like that with tribal knowledge to get that algorithm right, because that next millennial generation that needs to come and do that, right? They're not going to stop what they're doing. They need a manufacturer. And honestly, this particular manufacturer couldn't even recruit people to come and work in this particular plant. So having a remote plant with algorithms defined for this production to go on was very, very key. So you're right, it's difficult to scale, but times are different. And we've got to kind of prepare for that if we want to keep going.
Jason?
I think AI is a difficult concept for people to grasp. And where I've seen it ultimately work best is when there's a really well-prescribed use case for it. And those are starting to emerge now, which is great. For instance, back to the cybersecurity point, there's a lot of cybersecurity platforms now that are integrating AI into it, and they're sharing the data between different sites so they can actually automate the process of detection, isolation, and capture. So when you hear how AI is actually applied to solving the problem, like you were describing today, I think that's when people start to get it, and that's really what's going to drive it forward. Because the idea of just kind of like, I started my career in software and kind of the Java world way back when, and what I know about it is that when you pitch a concept like Java or SOA or all these other technical concepts, until somebody says, well, why do I need it? If you just sell a platform without a use case, you're not going to sell the platform. And AI's in a little bit of that trap right now, but it's emerging, it's getting there. Like Nozomi's a sponsor here, and they use AI in their cybersecurity, and it works great, right? It's a good example.
Phil?
So, I mean, the only thing I guess I'll add, and I agree with both of you, that I don't see it scaling at Nissan right now. They're very much, and again, when we talked about a best practice and getting ahead of the curve, was that we were able to develop product solutions and that scaled like crazy. But what's going on in that space, I see, and again, I'll exaggerate a little bit, hundreds of vendors coming in the door and selling everybody about their solution is the best solution. So and again, that opens up, and I told myself I wasn't going to go there today, but I'm going to now, is that then all of a sudden, then you pick a new product, a new company you never worked with, okay, now legal's involved, their legal's involved, and you spend 6 months working on the terms and conditions of the agreement. So, and it's a point solution. So there's an awful lot of energy right now chasing this. Now, we've got AI over many different areas, but again, it's very point solutions right now, and it's like, how do we get to the point where it is scalable, we are starting to standardize on something so it can be. So, because right now, it's a lot of people chasing it, and it's a lot of overhead to manage.
So when I first started, I remember we were all worried about putting Windows PCs on the plant floor. And now, with the cloud, it's interesting today that people are talking about, hey, yeah, we're excited about the cloud. If I go back 5 years, talk to a CIO of a major automotive, not Nissan, he was like, no, we're not putting data in the cloud. They're afraid of that. And now to see that adoption, it's really good to see. AI, I agree with Jason there. It's got to get that use case. It feels like it's in the early innings. I think there's a lot of value for it. And if I'm back here in 20 years talking at this panel, we'll probably be talking about AI, and it's already in there. But I think
Some of those PCs running Windows XP are still on the factory floor.
yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, I found them.
Yeah.
Actually, Ted stole my answer, so no. So after going through all, the factory tours and especially this project that we're trying to do with Amazon, I would say, the good thing is I know what I know. Bad thing is I don't know what I don't know. I'm hoping that some of Pugel's optimism of unsupervised AI will at least start these manufacturers down the path, but at least we're getting tools in front of them, tools that they can do their own visualization, things like that. Again, I've been doing this a long time. I haven't seen any like huge epiphany and go, oh my God, AI, and we just realized this. But I think we've got the tools and the technology to slowly get there, but I don't think it's going to be overnight.
That's for sure. Well, please join me in giving the panelists and speakers a round of applause. I think they did a great job.